Good afternoon. My name is Joey, and today we'll be analyzing the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, as a multifaceted strategy in contemporary international politics. I will argue that the BRI is a sophisticated policy tool designed to address domestic economic challenges while simultaneously reshaping the global order. To navigate this complex topic, my presentation will follow this agenda. First, I will establish the BRI's scale and significance. Second, I will delve into the historical and domestic economic drivers behind its launch. Third, I will analyze the BRI through several distinct theoretical lenses in IR, including a comparative case study. Finally, I will examine its operational model, future trajectory, and the global governance challenges that it presents. Throughout this presentation, I'll be guided by three key questions. What historical and domestic economic problems is the BRI designed to solve? How do established and emerging theories of IR explain China's actions and goals? How does the BRI operate, and what are the critical risks and opportunities for the future? I invite you to keep these questions in mind as we proceed. To understand its ambition, one must first grasp its scale. The BRI encompasses nearly 40% of global GDP, 66% of the world's population, and with over $1 trillion in investments and contracts. It is not an exaggeration to call it, as many have, the most significant geoeconomic and geopolitical project of this century. But why did China launch this initiative? The answer lies in its economic evolution. Following the bring-in policy of 1978 and joining the WTO in 2001, China became a manufacturing powerhouse and the recipient of massive foreign capital. However, by the 2010s, its role had transformed from a recipient to a major global capital exporter. The 1999 Go Out policy laid the groundwork for this shift, which the BRI, launched in 2013, systematized and scaled up to a global level. The BRI was a strategic solution to several pressing domestic issues. First, overproduction. State-owned enterprises in sectors such as steel and cement face massive excess capacity. Second, foreign reserves. China held trillions in low-yield US Treasury bonds, seeking higher returns on its capital. And third, regional disparity. The interior provinces lagged far behind the developed coastal regions. The BRI directly addressed these by finding external markets for industrial output, diversifying foreign assets into infrastructure, and integrating Western China into global trade routes. Now, let's apply some IR theory. From a neorealist perspective, the BRI is a clear instrument of state power. In an archaic international system, China is utilizing its economic might to create a sphere of influence and strategic dependencies. This is not merely commerce. It is a calculated move to challenge unipolar US hegemony and methodically rewrite the geopolitical landscape, increasing China's relative power and security. Conversely, a neoliberal institutionalist perspective offers a different emphasis. Here, the BRI is seen as China's effort to create a parallel system of institutions and norms. By establishing new frameworks for financing and cooperation, such as the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, China wrestles influence from traditional Western-led institutions like the World Bank and IMF. The goal is to integrate China into global governance, but firmly on its own terms, advocating for a more pluralistic and less conditional system of development finance. We can also analyze the BRI through normative ethical frameworks. From a functionalist or utilitarian point of view, the BRI generates the greatest good for the greatest number. It provides essential infrastructure, ports, railways, power grids, to development-starved nations. From this perspective, the immense economic potential and developmental benefits ethically outweigh the associated financial risks. However, from a deontological perspective, focused on duties and rules, serious concerns are raised. Critics argue that the principle of sovereign autonomy is violated when Chinese firms, acting as extensions of the state, engage in non-transparent contracts that can trap nations in debt. The ethical breach occurs when strategic assets fall under Chinese control after the loan defaults, undermining the recipient nation's long-term self-determination. Moving beyond purely rationalist theories, Constructivism offers a crucial lens, the power of ideas and socialization. The BRI is not just an economic project, it is a vehicle for socializing participating states into a China-centric set of norms and practices. This challenges the EU's model of normative power, which is often tied to political conditionalities. China promotes an alternative framework centered on sovereign equality and non-interference. By accepting BRI financing and standards, be it in railway gauges, 5G technology, or port management, participating countries are subtly being socialized into a system where development is decoupled from political reform. This is a long-term strategy to build a bloc of states that share China's fundamental principles of international conduct. The BRI also actively engages with the core realist concept of the security dilemma, where one state's efforts to increase its own security inevitably decrease the security of others in a zero-sum game. China's insistence that the BRI is purely commercial is challenged by the reality of dual-use assets. A commercial port funded by the BRI, like Hambantota in Sri Lanka, can also service Chinese naval vessels, extending the PLA's maritime reach. From Beijing's perspective, this is about securing sea lines of communication. From a rival's perspective, China's string of pearls is a strategic encirclement. This creates a classic security dilemma. Actions China views as defensive are perceived as offensive threats by rivals, prompting counter-initiatives like the Quad, which in turn pushes China to further secure its position. To further crystallize the BRI's place in IR theory, a comparative case study with the post-World War II Marshall Plan is illuminating. Through a realist lens, both are about building spheres of influence. The Marshall Plan was to contain the Soviet Union, while the BRI is to challenge American primacy. From a liberal institutionalist perspective, the Marshall Plan helped build the multilateral rules-based order. The BRI, conversely, often operates bilaterally and creates parallel institutions like the AIIB, seeking to supplement, not strengthen, the existing system. A constructivist would note that the Marshall Plan socialized Europe into a transatlantic liberal democratic identity. The BRI socializes partners into a consensus that prioritizes state-led development and sovereignty over liberal political norms. This comparison underscores that the BRI is a fundamentally different project, designed for a different strategic and normative goal: to build a pluralistic, multipolar world order. To understand how this vast initiative operates, we can use the principal-agent model from institutional theory. The principals, the Chinese Communist Party, and the State Council set the overarching political and strategic direction. Alignment with this vision is crucial for project approval. The agents, such as the China Development Bank and large state-owned enterprises, are then deployed to implement this project on the ground. This structure ensures strategic coherence, but can also lead to challenges, where agents might prioritize political goals over pure commercial viability. This complex interplay of theories yields a balanced assessment of pros and cons. On one hand, the BRI fills critical infrastructure gaps, promotes the international use of the renminbi, creates dual-use assets for the PLA, provides fast, non-conditional lending, and increases China's legitimacy in multilateral forums. On the other hand, it carries risks of heightened tensions, debt distress, a lack of transparency that can foster corruption, and concerns linked to the security dilemma, and about eroding local political and strategic autonomy. It's a package deal where development finance comes with heightened strategic and economic influence for China. In response to international backlash and domestic economic shifts, the BRI is also evolving. The new mantra is high-quality development. This means a strategic pivot towards small but beautiful projects that have more immediate local impacts and lower debt risks. Furthermore, China is heavily investing in the digital Silk Road, seeking to shape the future of global technology and data governance. As data from the Green Finance and Development Center shows, while annual investment volumes have fluctuated, the strategic commitment remains, albeit in a more refined and sustainable form. The BRI's success has triggered a remobilization of the West, presenting a direct challenge to existing global governance structure. Initiatives like the EU's Global Gateway and the G7's Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment are explicit responses to the BRI. This competition validates the BRI's impact and sets the stage for a new era of strategic rivalry in development finance, offering recipient countries more choices, but also potentially forcing them to align with competing geopolitical blocs, a direct manifestation of the systemic pressures that we discussed. In conclusion, the Belt and Road Initiative is a pivotal force in reshaping IR. It is a practical solution to domestic economic imperatives, a grand strategy that can be understood through realist, liberal, and constructivist lenses, and operational reality that triggers security dilemmas and normative competition. It directly challenges the established post-war liberal economic order, not through direct confrontation, but through the creation of alternative pathways, institutions, and norms. Thank you very much for your attention.